in a world where the number of movies available is great, but many are so bad, you'll learn a new definition of hate. One man sifts and reviews through the movie sludge. One man will be the movie cop, jury, and judge. He goes by many names, but you know him by Movies Merica.
I would long 3,000 years, and I would long 3,000 more, just to be the man who would long 3,000. Roll that intro.
Hey, all you beautiful movie-loving people out there, live from a red carpet somewhere, surrounded by celebrities. This is the Movies Merica podcast with Van Ebert, where movie reviews meet cold brews. Van will review your favorite and maybe not so favorite movies while enjoying some ice-cold beers and saying cheers. Now let's head into the theater and join our illustrious movie reviewer du jour, who's no doubt got the beer ready to pour, Van Ebert. Welcome, lords and ladies, boys and girls. I am trying to talk in a mystical storytelling tone of voice, for that is the type of movie I will be reviewing this week. That's right. 3,000 Years of Longing is this week's lucky contestant here on Movies Merica. Yes, and this is going to be the second Idris Elba movie that I will be reviewing in a row. So, yeah, way to go, Idris. Yep, there you go. Kudos to you, my man. And so, before we get into the movie, let's tantalize you with a trailer from 3,000 Years of Longing.
My name is Alethea. My story is true. I am a solitary creature by nature. I have no children, no siblings, no parents. I did once have a husband. If there is fate, who can say? But in the Grand Bazaar of Istanbul, I chose a memento. I like it. Whatever it is, I'm sure it has an interesting story.
So, what will you wish for?
What is your heart's desire?
I do have a question. What does one do with 3 wishes?
You'll see.
Oh.
Not to get confused with 3,000 Miles to Graceland, the Kevin Costner, Kurt Russell movie from back in 2001 about casino thieves that dress up as Elvis. No, not that movie. This is 3,000 Years of Longing. Absolutely. And before we actually get into the movie review, let me give you some facts for you. Yes. So this podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many other fine podcast platforms. Platforms you can find all kinds of podcast episodes here. But I'd like you to focus in on this here little podcast called Movies Merica. Yeah, absolutely. So laser focus on this one right here. You will not be disappointed. All right. And if you're on Apple Podcasts listening to this, feel free to zip on down to the very bottom of all the episodes. And there are 5 stars down there, 5 tantalizing stars. Yes. And yeah, if you really feel like giving me 5 stars, definitely give me 5 stars down there. I definitely would appreciate it there. Always thankful for that and humbled beyond belief when I get a 5-star rating. If you don't feel like giving me a 5-star rating, give me whatever rating you want. We're all about honesty here at Movies Merica Corporation. And also, while you're down there, there's a write a review button, and use that to write a review if you so like. You want to, give me some tips as far as what would make this more enjoyable for you, what would get you to listen to this more. Hey, I'm all ears, and I'm happy to try to incorporate any kind of suggestions you have, because this podcast isn't for me to like, it's for you to like. And so I'm all about, modifying, changing, whatever it takes to make these episodes, more of a good time for y'all. That's for sure. And then if you want to zip all the way to the very top of all the episodes, there's the ellipsis, the 3 dots there. If you click in there, there's a follow the show option, and then that, if you choose that will download all the episodes automatically there for you. Yeah, isn't that handy? Yeah, it's almost like Apple Podcasts was thinking of that or something like that. Absolutely, it's almost like it's by design. But also the podcast episodes, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that they are also on moviesmerica.com. And also I'm on social media on Twitter and Instagram under Movies Merica. Also have a Facebook page called Movies Merica as well, if you want to check me out on there. And all right, so now that we've got all that crucial info out the door, as you know, this is the home of movie reviews mixed with ice cold brews. And this episode's ice cold brew that I will review for you, yes, and we're not through. This week's brew is Mosaic IPA from Community Beer Company. That's right, from here in Texas. And, the word mosaic, I think, just applied to this movie, the 3,000 Years of Longing, because it is a mosaic of a lot of different things, and it's not a straightforward movie. It's a coat of many colors, that's for sure. So Mosaic IPA just sounded like it would just be perfect for this particular movie that I'm going to review here for you today. All right. So, hey, my voice is already getting parched. If only I had a beer in hand to help me quench that parching. Oh, wait, I do. Let me take a little tug off this bad boy. Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So that's an India Pale Ale. That's an IPA right there. It's got good and hoppy, So every once in a while, I'm in the mood for an IPA, and I think this Mosaic IPA did the trick. And, again, I don't get any money from any of these breweries. It's a labor of love. When you love something like beer, love something like movies, doing these reviews and drinking beer while I do them, believe me, it's a vacation for me. So it is no labor at all. So I'm happy to do it. All right, so let's get into 3,000 Years of Longing. That's what you're here for, right? Yeah, this is the meat of the episode. And so, yeah, with this one, like I said, this is the second Idris Elba movie I've reviewed in a row, because I guess is just a... they're just bulking up on Idris Elba movies, I guess, here in August of 2022. Because last week I did Beast, which starred Idris Elba, and this week, obviously, he's in 3,000 Years of Longing, and I'm doing this review. So there you go. All right, I think we've covered that. So this movie, there's some good in it, and there's some bad in it, okay? And one of the good things in it is, it's got some cool visuals in it. It's very mystical. It harkens from centuries past, and it when you have a movie that involves a Djinn or a genie, they call it a Djinn, but it's more commonly known as a genie. When you have these genie visuals, you can do some cool things with that, because this particular genie, just like in Aladdin, they can shapeshift and move into different shapes and get big and small and whatever, and fit in whatever space they need to fit in. And I think that the visual effects artists in this movie do a pretty good job with that. They put their imagination in play and flexed it as far as what kind of cool visuals that they could use for the genie. And they also have some pretty good visual effects that have nothing to do with the genie. Some cool creature effects in this when they go to the part of the movie where they're going back in time and centuries ago, and some cool visual effects that they use there. So that definitely was a feast for the eyes there. So that was cool. And like I said, in this movie, they don't really refer to the genie as a genie. They call it a Djinn, or spelled D-J-I-N, a Djinn. And Idris Elba plays the Djinn in this movie. And then Tilda Swinton plays Alethea, the main protagonist in this here movie. And you may have seen Tilda Swinton like in Michael Clayton. I always think of her when she was in the movie Snowpiercer with Chris Evans, about the train in a post-apocalyptic world, where the train is circumnavigating the Earth continually in this icy post-apocalyptic world. And it's kind of like a character study on social hierarchy and that kind of thing. And anyway, so Tilda Swinton plays like a kind of dastardly, kind of slimy character in that movie. So if you haven't seen Snowpiercer, that's a masterful movie. Go check that out. Okay, but now back to the movie that I'm actually reviewing, okay? So, yeah, and I think that another good thing about this movie is I think it will hold your interest, partly at least, if you're a fan of history, which I am. I'm a big history buff, and so when they go back in time and they start, mentioning names like Sheba and King Solomon, that made my ears perk up, when I was watching the movie, and I was like, oh, hey, okay, right, I'm kind of curious. You've got my interest peaked. It's it was like Leo DiCaprio in Django, or Django Unchained. He's just like, well, first you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. So it definitely had my attention when they started going back in history. I like that. And also, if you're a fan of storytelling, I think you'll like this movie. And I think that's what Tilda Swinton's character, Alethea, pretty much is. I think she's like a literary scholar. So she's basically an expert on storytelling and breaking down stories and, just all the facets and all the ins and outs and angles and, psychology behind storytelling and originations and history of it. She has a lot of knowledge that she can unpack. And so, yeah, if you're a big storytelling fan, I think you'll like this movie. And it's an original movie. This is not part of any kind of franchise. So that's a positive about this movie. That's one good thing I liked about the movie. Now, to the negative. Okay. This movie, it's got some parts in it that I just didn't get. Okay, like she starts having some visions of characters towards the beginning of the movie, and I just don't get like what they had to do with the rest of the plot at all. Maybe you'll watch it and you'll figure it out. I've only seen the movie once, and there's a lot to this movie, so I haven't had a chance to add up the numbers, so to speak, right, to do the deep dive. I think this is not quite on the level of Inception or Tenet, like any of those Christopher Nolan movies where you got to watch the movie like 17 times before you start getting, before you finally get it all figured out. This isn't that complex, but it wouldn't hurt to, see it for me to see it a couple times to, maybe catch some stuff I didn't catch on, on the first go round. But I just didn't get like these visions of these characters that she has towards the beginning of the movie that no one else can see. I just didn't get like what that had to do with the movie. And there's also some plot points that make absolutely no sense in this movie. And you'll learn in this movie, and this is not a spoiler or really anything, but like the genie is made up of like electromagnetic signals, electromagnetic pulses, and that kind of comes into play later on in the movie. And it becomes kind of a problem, or not kind of, it becomes a big problem. And, when you think about it later on, and when you think about it when you're watching the movie, you're like, there's a number of things that they could have done in order to not make that a concern or to alleviate that concern. that are pretty obvious. I mean, if I can think of them, they're pretty obvious. And so it's just a plot point that just didn't make any sense whatsoever. So they could have done a little bit better, with the screenplay if they just would have thought it through a little bit more. I mean, obviously, if you're a screenwriter, not every screenwriter can think of anything. I mean, maybe they, watch the movie later on and like, oh man, you know what? I just realized my own plot point that doesn't make any sense. But hey, it's too late. The movie's up on the screen. I'm watching it. I'm at the movie debut. Too late to change it now, And so maybe even the screenwriters like later realize that as well. But you'll notice that, and that's not the only plot point that makes no sense. You'll watch it, and I think you'll be like, yeah, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they go there? Like what? They could have just avoided that whole thing by doing this, Anyway, so, but yeah, like I said, it has some cool visuals. I mean, it does some really good world building in it. Now, another director that I'm sure you've heard of that does some really excellent world building and great character building or just creature building is Guillermo del Toro. Okay, Guillermo del Toro of Hellboy and Blade 2 and Pan's Labyrinth, and he just did Nightmare Alley. I mean, with Hellboy, the Hellboy movies and Pan's Labyrinth, he creates some cool visuals, with his movies, and cool creature, builds or cool creature creations, and they're just very immersive, right? And he creates these creatures that evoke emotions, that evoke an emotional reaction, either whether it's fright or fascination. If it's caring and curiosity. He makes his characters very jarring in a pleasurable way or in an alarming way, and his visuals that accompany those creatures, they complement the creatures. Okay. They add to it. They're very symbiotic, and it just creates this cool feast for the eyes when you're watching it, and it makes it very easy. It's his movies are very easy to lose yourself in, right? Because they're so fantastical. Okay, and if you're looking for a movie that you just want to forget about real life and just immerse yourself, like just diving into a swimming pool of storytelling and narrative, go to a Guillermo del Toro movie or watch a Guillermo del Toro movie like Pan's Labyrinth and the Hellboy movies, Blade 2 too, as well. And so when I bring Guillermo del Toro up, because this movie tries to immerse you in it, but I think that Guillermo del Toro could have done a better job with this movie than George Miller. And I should mention, George Miller is the one that directed this movie here. And George Miller is a great filmmaker in his own right. I mean, he's a legend. I mean, he's mostly known for his Mad Max movies. And that brings me to another point, okay? His last movie, or his movie he did before this, was 7 years ago, and it was Mad Max Fury Road, okay? And that movie took the world by storm. That was a summer movie, I think, in 2015? And it was just this visual spectacle, just nonstop, just slamming it to the side of your head kind of action, right? I mean, you just couldn't take your eyes off it. It was just explosions and car crashes, and just cool characters and just gunplay and just this kinetic, frenetic action movie, right? Cool car chases and you just couldn't take your eyes away. You couldn't look away from that movie, and it was just so energetic, and it was forward moving, and it had a lot of propulsion to this movie. It just never stopped to take a breath. It just was always forward moving. It just had a velocity to it. And then he does this movie 7 years later. 3,000 Years of Longing. And there is absolutely zero propulsion in this movie. It's a very stationary movie. It, like, most of it takes place in a hotel room where they do cut back to, they have flashbacks to history and all that. So it's not always in this hotel room, but that's kind of their base of operations, so to speak, for the plot. And so they're not in car chases in this movie. Okay, there's no slam, bang, explosive action or anything like that in this movie. So it is a departure from, a lot of George Miller movies, pointedly or notably Mad Max Fury Road from 7 years back there with Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, which it's hard to believe that it's been 7 years since that movie came out. That movie is just fantastic. But yeah, I mean, George Miller just he's got a weird track record in his movies. I mean, he obviously is trying not to be pigeonholed as a director and in what movies he gets offered, right? So I mean, his filmography is all over the place. I mean, he did Mad Max 1, 2, and 3 with Mel Gibson, and then he did the Babe movies with the pig, right? And then he does the Happy Feet movies, and then he does Mad Max Fury Road, and then he does this. I mean, those movies are like all over the place. You got kid movies, you got violent, dark, post-apocalyptic action movies. I mean, you've got animated movies. I mean, it's just, and then now you've got 3,000 Years of Longing, which is it seems like an independent movie, and it's not for everybody. I mean, it's like a adult storytelling adventure, okay? Because this movie is not for the kids, okay? It's rated R, and it definitely earns its R rating just because it's got a ton of nudity, and it's got some sexual content in it, and some mild violence in it. So it's not for the kiddies, So mom and dad, don't bring your kiddies to this movie here. But it's George Miller. Yeah, I mean, hey, to his credit, he refuses to get pigeonholed. Okay, and that more power to him right there. He wants to, flex as an artist, as a director, and that's great. But I think like this movie would have been in better hands with somebody like Guillermo del Toro or maybe like Peter Jackson. I think they could have gotten a little bit more mileage out of this, and they could have done some better world building and character building in this. So, but I mean, I think it's worth a watch. I liked it better than the Idris Elba movie I did last week, Beast. This movie's better than that. So, but speaking of better, hey, I am going to take another drink off of this Mosaic IPA here. So, and again, this beer here, I don't think this is like an obscure beer. I think like if you go to like a big grocery store in the area, you could probably find Community's Mosaic IPA. But yeah, let me get a little tug off this here again. Whoa, boy. Control yourself. All right. Jeez. I was like starting to chug that thing over here like I'm a frat boy or something. But yeah, it's so yeah, this movie, it missed I tell you, it definitely missed a grand opportunity. I mean, we got a movie about a genie in a bottle, and what? No Christina Aguilera Genie in a Bottle song during the end credits? What? Man, I think we got gypped. Come on. Like, how many genie movies are there? And, you got to waste that golden opportunity to play that musical trailblazer, Christina Aguilera? Come on. So, but yeah, this movie does have I'll tell you, this movie is not a timeless movie. And what I mean by that is, however you think or whatever your opinion is about, like, mask wearing during the COVID pandemic and whatnot. And I don't know, like, what regulations that this movie had to deal with. I mean, there's been plenty of movies that filmed during the pandemic where none of the characters in the movie are wearing a mask. And in this movie, a lot of people are walking around wearing masks in this movie. I mean, they have a whole classroom of students that Alethea is teaching, where they're all wearing masks or something like that. And it's like, in 10 years, when someone watches this movie, and there's been 10 years of movies that weren't filmed during the pandemic where no one's wearing a mask. This movie, they're gonna watch this movie in 10 years, like, oh, well, obviously this movie was filmed during the pandemic, because you're gonna have decades and decades of movies where no one's wearing masks, and then you're gonna have a few movies for a few years where you've got people wearing masks left and right in the movies, and then after this period of time, you're going to have decades and decades potentially where you got movies where no one's wearing masks in there. So in 10 years, like I said, people are going to like watch, they're going to watch movies, and then they're going to throw 3,000 Years of Longing in, and they're going to see all this mask wearing. I'm going to be like, mask? What are they wearing? Oh, that's right. Remember 10 years ago when we had that COVID pandemic? Yeah, they must have filmed this movie during the pandemic, and they thought that they had to have all the characters wear masks, like, which they don't. Because, yeah, there's been plenty of movies that have been released during the pandemic. I mean, like Beast, the movie I reviewed last week, that was filmed during the pandemic. None of the characters in that movie were wearing masks. So this one, yeah, they were all wearing masks, and I don't know if maybe that was George Miller's and or the screenwriter's kind of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for here? I guess their take, or I guess their commentary on mask wearing, like they're showing their hands, and as far as what they think about wearing masks during the COVID pandemic, and like this is their statement, like, we think everyone should mask up during the COVID pandemic, and that's why they have that in this movie. So, but I just thought that was kind of curious, because yeah, you don't have to have masks, when you're filming a movie per se. You could have like made your movie a little bit more timeless with that. And then also I think they throw in like some kind of leftist immigration lecturing in this movie that they didn't need. I wish this movie would have just stuck with the story, the storytelling, the characters and whatnot, and just decided, to leave the preaching out of this movie. Obviously the filmmakers, the creatives would tell me, well, this is my movie, I could just put whatever in it I want, which is true. This is true. But I also have the perfect right to criticize you putting that in the movie, and no one's going to stop me, okay? And so, yeah, they just could, they should just do away with that, because if I were making a movie, I have my political beliefs, I have my political opinions. I'm not going to put them in a movie because I'm not going to bore people with my political opinions. I'm not going to put them in something where they can't just scroll past it, or they can't just turn it off. Well, I guess, if you're watching this on TV or DVD, you could turn the movie off, but I'm talking about like in the movie theater. So, but yeah, I it was hard to ignore that and to not notice that. So, but let's face it, most creatives are very liberal. And so, a lot of them are just chomping at the bit to throw their liberal political points in their movies. They have, people have to rein them in and kind of hold them back. And hey, this is supposed to be a movie, not an after-school special, okay? This isn't a CNN town hall, all right? This is a movie. You're supposed to entertain and make something engaging for people of all political, of all political opinions or political postures or whatever. So, but yeah, so I think they dropped the ball on that, but I think I belabored the point on that enough. But yeah, so this movie is, I think it's worth checking out. I don't necessarily think you got to go see it at the theaters. You could wait. This is one of those movies where, you could definitely wait for it to come out on streaming or wherever, or even if you wanted to wait until you're passed out, from too much Chablis, on the couch, waking up, rubbing the sleepy seeds out of your eyes at for 3 o'clock in the morning, and you got HBO up on your TV, and all of a sudden, hey, 3,000 Years of Longing starting up. Hey, I'll watch it. Hey, there you go. I think it's good enough for that. But yeah. So, but with that here, I think I've let you know enough what I think of 3,000 Years of Longing. And again, I just want to thank you for listening to this episode of Movies Merica podcast. And please, feel free to share this podcast with anybody you even remotely think would enjoy it. It's I love it when people listen to the show, and feel free to spread the word of this podcast if you're enjoying it. So maybe you're not enjoying it, but you know a movie buff in your life that would like it. Don't hesitate for a second to let them know. You just got to tell them, hey, check out this podcast. Just look up Movies Merica on Apple Podcast, or they could look it up on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Again, like I said, Movies Merica is on a bunch of different platforms. It's also at moviesmerica.com. So hey, don't hog all the Movies Merica for yourself. Go ahead and share it with others. But with that, hey, as I always say, get out there, everybody. Those movies aren't going to watch themselves. Bye.
Hey guys, don't leave the video quite yet. Okay, I've got a popo. They're coming after me, and I don't have much time to tell you, but you need to like and subscribe this video right here, down below. It's right down there. It's just waiting. It's waiting for you down there, okay? And make sure you watch these videos over here too. You'll be doing me a big favor. I'm gonna be in handcuffs pretty soon. All right. Thanks for watching.